All right, so we're going to get started. I see that there are about 37 people that are online. Welcome to the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, our webinar on minority and women-owned business enterprises support slash solicitation. My name is Tamika Jacques. As you can see on the first slide there, I am the Senior Program Director at MassCEC, who leads the workforce team, as well as Beverly Craig, our Senior Program Manager at MassCEC, will also be facilitating this webinar. I'm going to ask that you would hold any questions that you might have, or if you have a question, to put it in the chat and we will field it. We don't have different precautions on this webinar, meaning that if someone takes their computer off mute, we'll be able to hear you. And instead of just having, so many interruptions, we're just going to ask that you would just hold your questions until the end. And then if it's really super important, I would say just put it in the chat and maybe we can answer it that way. But just because, number one, we are recording, and it looks like there's about 37 people that are on this recording. So I don't want it to get too much out of hand as far as questions, and then all of a sudden we're at 1 o'clock and we haven't made it through. So if your question does not get answered today, I want to say that on this first slide, you will see that there is an email address that will be answered. So if for, by any chance you have further questions after this webinar, or you're just still have questions, if you watch the recording again, you can also email workforce@masscec.com, and then we can go from there. So thank you all for attending. We are excited that everyone that is on this call potentially would like to partner with MassCEC, and I think that's great. I think that's amazing. So if you have not heard of MassCEC before, we have our mission down the bottom. We are considered an economic development agency. We were developed in 2008 by the then prestigious Governor Patrick, and we've pretty much been moving ever since. I joined MassCEC in 2012, and so I've just celebrated my 10 years at MassCEC, and happy to have this new program that we have launched. All right, so is everybody with me? You can all hear me? You probably just didn't hear me speak a few minutes ago, is that correct?
No, I think everyone's hearing you. I'm having trouble advancing the slides. 1 second, Tamika.
Okay, great. Great, awesome. So this is our agenda, what we're gonna cover today. Again, if you have any questions, you can go to workforce@masscec.com if you want to, submit questions after this recording. We have here the agenda. We're going to talk about the climate law. This is pretty much why we are here, how this funding came about. So I'll talk a little bit about that. We will go over eligibility. We'll go over the funding opportunity and deadlines. This webinar today is not the only webinar. We will host some industry webinars, as well as we will allow people to network together. And we'll talk a little bit the selection criteria. We'll go over the application materials and requirements, as well as questions. So again, if you missed the first couple of minutes, my name is Tamika Jacques. I am the Senior Program Director at MassCEC, and this will also be facilitated by Beverly Craig, who is Senior Program Manager at MassCEC. So for those of you that have not heard of MassCEC before, or this is your first time participating in one of our webinars, you can see that we do a lot at MassCEC, but over the past couple of years, we have been focusing on 4 focus areas. We have, as you can see from the screen, high performance buildings is one of our areas that we focus on, clean transportation, net zero grid, and offshore wind. And the commonality between all these 4 focus areas is workforce development and, of course, equity. And so the past couple of years, we have been focusing on each one of these focus areas. And again, we are also working on climate goals, right? So as you all know, Governor Baker last March signed the Next Generation Roadmap Climate Law, and that essentially puts us working towards what we call 2030, 2050 net zero grid emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. And so what happened from that climate bill as we're working towards our 2030, 2050 climate goals is that MassCEC was awarded every year from the utilities $12 million that will come to MassCEC to support workforce development efforts. And so under that bill is 3 different segments that we are to focus that money on. The first is residents of environmental justice neighborhoods. And as you can see from this map, I encourage you to Google this map. Actually, you can go and Google this map, and you can be able to see the definition of environmental justice neighborhood, as well as where the environmental justice neighborhood blocks are. EJ communities neighborhoods are by street address, they're done by blocks. And so if you have not seen this map, or if you're an organization that is not aware of who could be considered an environmental justice neighborhood, I would encourage you to Google this map and to go on and you can put different addresses in. The second segment is why we are here today, that these funds will focus on is the minority and women business enterprises. Again, we are working towards 2030, 2050 goals. So we want to be able to support, we'll talk a little bit about that today. We want to be able to support these businesses that we are now have been able to designate funds to. And the last is current and former fossil fuel workers. Again, with our climate goals, there are going to be many people out of jobs, example, the gas station attendant, as we are moving to reducing those greenhouse gas emissions. And so we know that as we advance this work, there will be some out of work. And so we are going to start with the former fossil fuel workers as in the legislation. So with that said, Bev, do you want me to do this part or would you like to? Okay, so with that, part of that $12 million this is our first solicitation that we are releasing under the $12 million that will come to MassCEC every year. And so with that, this is, we decided to concentrate first on minority women in business enterprises support. What it is, I'm sure most of you have seen the application. You all are on this call, so I know that you saw the email that went out, but we have put aside $4.5 million for the solicitation. And what it is grants between $250,000 and $1 million for organizations that would like to come in and partner with us to help us with this work, meaning that there are some MWBEs that need to be formed. They need help with getting state certification. They need help with getting DCAM certification, which is the Department of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance in Massachusetts. There's other certifications, federal certifications that are out there. We know that there are different companies that need help on how do they expand their business. A lot of times when a company is trying to get certified, they need back office support, right? How do they get all their accounting in line? Is it that they need to have some capital investment? Is it that they need to be able to hire staff, right? And so we essentially want to partner with organizations that could provide this support to the MWBEs that are in Massachusetts that are, already formed or trying to be formed, seeking to be formed. We want some education around that. And so that is one part of the solicitation. And the other part is there is applications. Maybe there is some of you on this call that are saying, I'm not sure I want to do this work. I want to be able to support minority and women business enterprises. And my organization has been doing this, but not on the climate solution, clean energy sector. And so we want to be able just to designate some staff resources time. And for any organizations that are like that, they can also come in and apply for a $50,000 planning grant to help us with this work. So we see this as, we'll have, you know, organizations that are ready to go, right? You've been thinking about this climate solution space and you want to be able to form businesses out there. You want to be able to support the businesses out there. You're ready to go, you're ready to come in to apply to MassCEC, or there's other organizations out there that are saying, you know what, we need a few months to kind of think about how we would support the climate industry. And we want to designate some staff time, do some research. So we want to apply for a $50,000 planning grant. So that's where I will start off there. Again, if you have questions on that, please put them in the chat and I'll let Bev continue on.
Great. Hi, everybody. So this is a really exciting opportunity, and I think the solicitation really lays out a lot of the details. So I would encourage you to go look at the details there, but we're just going to hit some of the like high-end things in this presentation. So in terms of organizations that would support this work, so maybe it's a nonprofit, a chamber of commerce, a trade association, maybe it's a college that has some kind of business development program. Even for-profit entities can potentially apply for this. We do ask that for-profit institutions partner with at least one nonprofit in applying. And we really are looking for applicants to define a particular sector, a business sector that is really critical for us to meet our 2050 net zero emissions goals in the state. So maybe that is around HVAC contractors getting more developed in their heat pump offerings and taking advantage of some of the new MassSAFE programs. Maybe it is general contractors or subcontractors who are really going to focus on high performance work, whether in the new construction or renovations area. Maybe it's holding like an incubator for startup businesses, for Black and brown businesses that are founding with innovative climate technologies, new businesses. Maybe it's around boot camps. Maybe it's around strategic introductions to lines of business. So we're expecting a whole bunch of different approaches, and we really encourage a lot of different approaches. There is, because we're talking about a decent amount of money over several years, it's really important that organizations that are applying do have a very detailed work plan about what they want to accomplish in the next 3 years. And so I mentioned going and looking at the solicitation itself. This is like a short link to that. And by the way, we will be sending around a PDF of this whole slide deck so that you can have this yourselves after the presentation. Anybody who has questions, we're going to be answering some of those live at the end of this presentation, but you may also send written questions by March 30th to this email, workforce@masscec.com, and we will get those posted by April 10th, the answers. And the submissions for this first round is April 29th. And like Tamika said, we're looking for applicants applying for between $250,000 and $1 million for 3 years worth of work. And if it scores really well, but we don't think that the work plans got enough detail to be funded at this time, you might be getting a, we'll reserve the opportunity to give you a planning grant and encourage you to come in 6 months later if funding is continues to be available. We are really hoping to announce the first round of awardees in June. It always can take a little longer sometimes than we think, but that's really what our timeline is here. And like Tamika said, every 6 months, this kind of program, we're going to try and open this up every 6 months until all the funding is awarded. So we recognize a lot of the people who are on this call probably want to find out who's in this space and how they might partner up with other people to effectively offer programs that would help businesses that exist right now that are minority or women-owned businesses to expand into these spaces, get micro credentials, get a lot of sort of new lines of business and strategic introductions, but you may not all know each other. And so One of the things we'd encourage people to do today in the chat is if you are interested in potentially partnering up with other people and seeing who else is on this webinar, we'd encourage you to put your name and email and your organization, and sort of if you do have like a category of businesses that you're most interested in, putting that into the chat. We will, after this webinar, all the people who attend, we will send information and an Excel spreadsheet that everyone can access and add their information to. If you are going to be looking for more, potential partnerships, we'd encourage you to add your name and look at that list and reach out to others who might be aligned with you. We also really want all applicants to be taking a look at some of the other webinars we'll be offering so that you sort of understand what priority like business sectors we are talking about here. So the first webinar is coming up next week, March 30th at 11 a.m. You can sign up for all of these on the main MassCEC Equity Workforce page. And this first one, we've done a little research ourselves about what we see nationwide that seems to be best practices for encouraging minority and women-owned businesses. And so we pulled together some of that information. And we've also tried to pull together some of the organizations we know of in Massachusetts that provide some support for minority and women-owned businesses. So this might not be necessarily specific to a climate critical field, but there definitely are a lot out there. So at this webinar next week, we will be just giving you like our initial research and who we know of, because we really encourage applicants to be taking advantage of programs that are already out there. There are a lot of small business support programs, but in this case, what we're looking for is you to customize it to fill in any gaps that are out there. And so March 30th, we will sort of tell you what we know of, and we hope you can jump off of that information. We also are going to be holding 2 webinars about the priority occupations that we believe Massachusetts is going to need a lot more of these occupations for climate goals. And so this gives you a sense of sort of where those business sectors are. The first webinar will be held April 5th, and it'll be a number of occupations where there's a short training period needed and not too much experience needed to enter. The second one's going to be a little bit longer training and more experienced occupations. So in terms of applications that we get on April 29th, we'll be looking across all of those and scoring them with these criteria in mind. So experience and innovativeness, we do encourage teams, and any experience that you guys have in supporting minority and women-owned business should be teased out in that portion of the application. Also, demonstration of market opportunity. So we want to make sure that you are targeting an area that's going to be an expansion business sector. And so there are a number of things mentioned in the solicitation, a number of studies that you can look through and use some of that data to sort of support your application. Then the real core of your application is the statement of work. This is like your 3-year plan. What are you, if you get money, what would you be spending it on? What sort of milestones would you have? And I will say, for the application, we want you to think out for the 3 years, but we recognize a 3-year grant. We may need changes of course, depending on how it goes in the first year. So people who are chosen, we will be, in the contracting process, we will be including that statement of work, but also the ability every year to revise based on how things are going. And budget and cost is 20 points as well. So, if you're aiming for helping 50 HVAC companies get expertise on heat pumps and then really increasing their business, we sort of want to know how per participant in your program, what you think it might cost. And, part of your scoring is going to be how well we think, how completely we think you're doing that and at what kind of cost. We also are curious about leveraging of resources and what your plan is for long-term success. And also we're hoping for a diversity of approaches, both in sector and geography for applicants that we'll fund. So the materials that you'll actually have to submit if you're applying, the first is just a signature and acceptance form. So the lead applicant, it can be a team, but one organization has to take the lead. And the person, you have to sign saying that you have the ability to apply for this and accept the grant. The meat of the application starts with attachment 2. It's an application form. It can be short, it can be long, but it does very much line up with what those selection criteria were that I just went through. Attachment 3 is just a sample legal agreement that MassCEC has for all of ours, and we wanted to have you see that in advance, and you sign on the application form that would be okay with you if you did get the funding. So you don't actually have to turn in attachment 3, it's just something for you to look at. And then attachment 4 is this meat, right? What are you planning to do? What's your statement of work? What are you going to do over the 3 years? And then finally is attachment 5. And that's like the budget and the proposed milestones for payments. And I will say there are 3 tabs associated with that. So make sure that you complete all 3 tabs on the budget. So just to show you what some of these things look like, attachment to the actual application form has a number of questions, and then you will click and tap to enter. And so again, like I said, we don't want a federal grant application of 50 pages. We want this short and sweet, and be succinct as you can, but just telling us the basics of what you are planning to do. In that application form also, what's really important is like, how many companies are you planning to bring through this each year? Is it existing ones? So what are the main metrics on a high level that you're planning to achieve? That's a really important part of this application form. Attachment 4, like I said, that's the meat. Here are like some examples, like you might, for a task 1, have a bunch of partners, right? And like setting up those subcontracts might be your task 1. If you're going to bring a bunch of companies through, so say it's electrical contractors, and you want to give them expertise in one piece of, so say it's like offshore wind electrical, you might be developing curriculum on how they can best get the right insurance requirements, the right back office, the right certificates to be able to run through. Pipeline of work. So when we looked at other programs nationwide that support minority and women-owned businesses, like strategic introductions and sort of where's the business going to be, that's a really important piece of all of this. So we encourage you to look at that. And then how you're going to actually recruit the companies or startups that you might be supporting. Then finally, there's this proposed budget and milestone payments. And like I said, there are 3 tabs. So one's just like your overall budget. So that might break out like a staff person to run this program and do the recruiting and do the strategic introductions. It might be, so if the companies you're targeting are having a really hard time finding new employees, it might be a fund for signing bonuses. Whatever it is, you're going to put all that in the budget for your overall ask of $250,000 to $1 million over that 3 years. There's sort of a subtask tab around a cost breakdown. So especially if you have some other grant money or other things that are supporting the work that you want to do here, this is where you can integrate those 2 groups of funds. And then finally, 3 is your proposed payment milestone plan. So like to get this up and started, you may need a lump sum. And then when you hit certain milestones, you would propose that you would get additional funding for that overall award. And I just want to mention too, because I think many of you either are minority and women-owned businesses or have a lot of contact with minority-owned businesses. Right now, before April 4th, there are COVID-19 or COVID, there's funding to help pandemic response. So small businesses that were really impacted their business. This program is still open till April 4th. There are actually 2. There's a $25 million one and a $50 million one. And I would encourage anyone who you know who is a small business to make sure that they know about this and that they've explored this. It's not a first come, first serve program. They're going to evaluate all the ones that come in by April 4th. I would also encourage any of you who know small businesses to look into this program, which has very recently been launched. And there was a Globe article about it yesterday. This is basically a $4,000 grant when you're trying to recruit new employees that you can use either as a signing bonus or as to help with them with like training on the job training. And then finally, I will mention also MassCEC's recently provided funding for companies that have certain kinds of fleets. So it has to be more your vans or larger vehicles, but we have free electrification planning services. So if you know small businesses that are in the next 5 years likely to purchase new vehicles, if they have more than 3 vehicles right now, they could be eligible for this program, which would provide free planning on how you would charge, the rebates that are out there, sort of how all this will work for a company. So I do encourage, that program is really trying to target minority and women-owned businesses. So those of you who know companies that might be interested in this, have them take a look at this and see if it's a good fit for them. So finally, we wanted to open it up for questions. I think it looks like we may have a bunch in chat, and I'm hoping, Nicole, do you want to read out some of the questions that you've seen?
I haven't seen any questions in the chat yet, but the copy and paste isn't necessarily working for me, so I've been typing through all of these intros.
Okay, it's great that everybody's been introducing themselves. I guess if you have a question, if you would raise your hand or type it into the chat and we can unmute you. So I see one question, which is, does the nonprofit partner for a private firm lead need to be Massachusetts, based in Massachusetts? So there is something in there in the RFP that's specific to this. I don't remember the details. Tamika, do you remember the details?
Yeah, who's ever lead should be registered to do business in Massachusetts. So if you are going to lead on an application, you need to have a physical Massachusetts address that you are registered to do business in Massachusetts. So we would not want an organization from California that doesn't have an registered to do business in Massachusetts as the lead applicant. But they could partner with another organization if they have, if they want to be a support, organization, but we do need for Massachusetts registered to do business in Massachusetts with a Massachusetts address as the lead applicant. As I probably should have mentioned when I was going over the overview of MassCEC, we are funded by ratepayers, and even though this is separate workforce equity funding, we are still requiring businesses to be registered to do business in Massachusetts.
I'm looking for more questions. I don't think let me look at all the participants. I think you can unmute yourself also if you're having trouble. I don't see any hands raised, but I bet there are questions.
Shantae, I think I see a hand from Shantae, and then I also see so if Shantae, if you want to ask your question, I'll say go first.
Thank you, Tamika. Hello, all. Shantae Davidson here. Did I hear you say that we have to partner with nonprofits, or are agencies or for-profits allowed to respond on their own?
Nope, you do not have to partner. We wanted an employer to partner, but if you are a profit agency serving the community, you could be the lead applicant and apply on your own. But it would be great to have a partner with you as you're doing this work. But
thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Tamika. So is there an opportunity for, like, let's say I were to submit an application and then there's somebody else on this and we would decide to partner. Can we submit 2 individual applications and then reference our partnership in our individual applications, or would we be required to submit together?
You can, I think it's a case-by-case basis, but I will say that if you all are, you could do 2 different applications, but the hope would be is that the participants would not be, you're not double counting your participants, right? So you might do something, Shantae, for 50 participants. Say if you're awarded 500,000, but someone else that's awarded 500,000 You know, I wouldn't say that the whole benefit is going to those 50. I would want to see those participants really separated out. So I would have to really understand what you are trying to partner with the other organization for. Let's just say that you're the lead applicant, but you need someone to come in and teach career development courses. I could see that partnership, like that being a partnership, but I'd really have to understand the application of how both of you are working on the same participants. Does that, I don't know if that answers the question, but I think
it's crystal clear. You want to make sure we're diversifying the money and we have as many individual stakeholders as possible. And so we're not double counting. Totally understand that. Thank you so much, Tamika.
Mm-hmm. The goal, the goals of the program, really is to get, the resources, like you said, Shantae, to as many businesses as possible, MWBEs, but also we want to see some MWBEs created. So maybe, you're counseling some people out there. We do want to see some new businesses created as well. So I'll just throw that little piece out there. So absolutely, we encourage you to partner, but we also, we want to make sure that everything is just, going through the state. We want to be in different regionals and things like that. And yes, regional planning agencies are eligible to apply. I see a hand up from Glenn. I'm not sure if Glenn, I know you, okay, your hand is back down. So I don't see any other hands up, but I will read the question. Hold on, okay, great. Hold on, let me just scroll back up.
Will there be program material distributed after this call to aid MWBE firms in getting involved in this initiative, and possibly a list of prospective lead applicants to reach out to? So yes, if you haven't put your name into the chat and you want to have your name shared, please go ahead and put your name, your organization, and your email. After this call, everyone who's registered, whether they showed up or not, we're gonna send the slide deck to as a PDF. And we will also have a link to an Excel spreadsheet where people who put their names on today during this will be listed, and that people can add to that list. I would encourage people to show up next week to the one where we've done our initial research, because I think there are some initiatives that already are existing that sort of would make sense to build off of, I think. And it's, if you don't know what all of those are, that's a good place to start for organizations that might be good to pair with.
And so the question was asking about, is there a benchmark on MWBE firms? You can go onto the state office of, I can't think of their name right now, but you can go on you can go on their webpage and you can see the list of firms. The problem with in the climate solution industry is that, and we've talked to them before, sometimes because we are the different occupations that kind of filter down, right? So we already know in our industry that electricians are going to be needed, or there's a lot of electrician companies out there per se, but when you try to get down into the weeds of electricians that specialize in, let's say, electric vehicles, that's kind of hard to tell when you go on that website. So you'll see, they'll have a number on there, but when we're looking, especially at this industry, we're trying to get more in the weeds as we do like our needs analysis that we're also doing. So, we're trying to just, it's hard because if you're an electrician, you designated as electrician, but you're not necessarily designated as someone that works in offshore wind, or it shows, what you're installing. So you can go on their website and look that up to see how many MWBEs are on there. When we put in some of our occupations, there's not as many, again, because it's not so much in the weeds.
And someone was asking if we're going to have office hours. We do plan to do that. So I would If any of you are not signed up for our workforce emails, we'll be announcing those there and also on our web page, which if you go to the MassCEC Equity Workforce page, that's where we'll always have all the upcoming webinars, the recordings, if you weren't able to catch the whole thing, and the slides and answers to questions will all be there. But we do plan to have office hours. We just haven't designated those yet. I would say also the webinar next week on the research that we've done of national organizations and what we know of in Massachusetts, there will be a networking breakout room session available afterwards. So I would encourage you to go to that if you're trying to find other partners to team up with. That's a good, webinar to give you a little bit of the basics, and it's just pointing you in a couple directions, but we do want to try and connect people together in this process.
Right. I think that's important that when you're attending the other webinars that we will give an opportunity to network with others. We realize that, this is new, in this space, in the climate solution, clean energy space. And so we know a lot of you have great ideas, and many of you have been thinking about this for a while, so maybe it's just meeting the right partner or to bounce ideas off somebody else. And I just want to be very clear, as Bev said, that, it's either you're coming in for a planning grant or you're coming in because you're ready. And, the funding is not going away anytime soon. So I don't want, everyone on this call also to feel rushed, because we will offer in 6 months, we'll offer this funding again. So I just want to be clear on that, please come to the webinars, use this as a networking to meet others, to bounce ideas off, each other. And then, as you're talking about that, thinking about that, maybe you're not ready for this first round, but then as you're meeting different people and you're networking, that you'll be ready, to come back to MassCEC in 6 months. So I want to be very clear that this is not our first, we're not just issuing the solicitation and then we're just going to be done. We are hoping that we will be able to partner with organizations over the next 3 to 5 years with these applications, with some technical assistance. We'll go along with whoever we do award. So I just wanted to be clear on that. This is not just a one-shot deal, that we are committed to this work several years, but in the beginning, the first 3 to 5 years. So I don't see any other questions. I don't see any other hands raised. Again, you can always, I'm not sure if okay, we took the PowerPoint down. Just as a reminder that if you have any, questions, to email workforce@masscec.com and we will answer your questions, or we will set up a meeting with you. I will say that as you're asking your questions, we will be able to, we'll answer as the best that we can. Some things we might not be able to answer just because we want to make sure that the solicitation is competitive. So we look forward to having all of your, applications come in. I do see that there's a hand raised. So Bernetta.
Yep. I'm asking, the next week's meeting is forcing you to register in events. And I've asked the question if you can change it so that you can just register without going into events. Because if you are pre-registered in events with several different emails, you cannot come into it just as whatever your new business is. It is forcing you to a site that registers you in events.
For next, Bernetta, let me make sure I understand this. When you went to go register for next week's webinar, it sent you to events?
That you have to register in events, yes.
Okay, we'll check on that. We'll make sure if there's, it should have been exactly what you did for this webinar, and it looks different.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, we probably just have a mistake then. So we will, thank you for pointing that out. We'll definitely go correct that.
Thank you.
And just in case anyone does miss something, these are all recorded and we will be posting them on that web page that's in the chat right now. So you can replay this, and we will be sending you those materials that I talked about earlier as well. So the PDF of this slideshow, and then when we get that link up of the actual video recording of this.
I see a question, Juan, and then I see Monique has a question. So let's start with Juan.
Good afternoon to everyone. I just that
I'm sorry, Juan. It sounds like we can't hear you.
Juan, do you want to type your question into the
Danny.
chat? Because we're having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, so the question is about the electrical vehicles. It has to be 3 or more, or it is just someone that just want to buy the first one?
No, I think you need to have a fleet of at least 3 vehicles right now.
Okay, thank you.
But if you would like to talk to the folks, you may, if you want, just email us at Workforce, the email that's down at the bottom of the screen right now, and we'll put you in touch with the folks on the fleet advisory. They can tell you more about the program, and maybe you know other, even if it doesn't work for you, maybe you know other people that it would work for.
Okay, thank you.
Monique.
Hi, everyone. Question, if you don't qualify in the first round, are you going to receive feedback as to why you didn't qualify, and are you able to resubmit?
Sure, yeah. So what we mentioned is that if you do not so much qualify, because we really would like to work with different partners. So maybe your application comes in and we just feel it's not ready. So we would probably issue you a planning grant, Monique, where we would say, you know what, we feel like you need, you know, a few more months to plan, 3 more months. Here's $50,000. So if your application, depending on, you know, how the points come in and the scoring, we would probably say, we just feel like you need a little bit more time. Would you consider doing a planning grant? So that is an option as well, that if it's, you know, depending on what the scores comes in the program, that we would be offering planning grants. And we would, and if, and let's just say that, you know, the application is, you know, we don't think it's worthy of a planning grant, or it's not, you know, awarded, we will work with each partner so that for the next round you will be in. We plan on offering technical assistance, having a partner do technical assistance. So the goal would be that as applications come in, we want to work with all of our partners to make sure that this work really is equitable, right? So you won't, you know, who is ever coming in, we don't just want to drop. We want to make sure that you know, we're working with you, because we know this funding is going to be around for a while. So we don't want to discourage anyone. We want to partner with as many partners as possible.
And that might mean connecting you with other applicants who are have similar ideas, so that you can work together on a bigger idea.
And just, you know, this piece is on the minority and women business, but we will have another solicitation on our website over the next probably next month on working with environmental justice communities and fossil fuel workers as well. So I just want to put that out there. I can't take further questions on that, but it's always good. This is why we want you to sign up, because this is not the only solicitation that MassCEC is going to have. So for those of you that are on this call that, you know, maybe this working with the minority and women business piece and enterprises is not for you, we will have some solicitations coming out probably at the end of next month on working with environmental justice communities and fossil fuel workers as well, some planning grants. So I just want to be clear on that, but it's just important that you sign up, because we will have many solicitations coming down to MassCEC. So just wanted to make sure everyone on this call is aware of that.
Are there any more questions we can answer live? And we will be taking email questions as well if something occurs to you later or after you look at the application.
Juan, I see your hand is up again. Did you have an additional question? And Monique, I'm not sure if you had an additional question. Feel free to ask. I still see your hand up as well.
Sorry, yes, I had one more question.
Sure.
So I know you said you're going to email this PowerPoint. I'm not sure if I have access to the chat afterwards for the link to the video. Could that possibly be put in the email as well?
Yeah, definitely. We'll send all these people that have been sharing their email contacts. We're going to put that into a spreadsheet that everyone can access. And if you didn't get to put your information in, or you weren't sure you wanted to, and you want to add your name at that point, that'll be like a public access thing for helping people to network with one another over time. And we will definitely link, once the video is up, I think we'll probably do 2 rounds of emails, honestly. One that's just this PowerPoint and that spreadsheet of contacts. And then it may take us a couple days to get the video replay of this up for everyone. Then there will be a second email that has that link. And if anytime you can't find any of this information, just go to the MassCEC Equity Workforce page, which the link is in the chat right now.
Any other questions? You can raise your hand, chime in. We are so excited that we have so many people on this webinar today, and we look forward to partnering with everyone that is on this call. You know, be patient with us. This is our first solicitation, really putting it out for minority and women business enterprises. So we are learning as we go, but we are more than excited that we have this funding to work with all of you. And so I would just encourage you, if you do have further questions, to email workforce@masscec.com and participate in the other webinars. So I do not see further questions.